Sooner or later, it says this hangout on air is live. I've been going. I don't know. I think I missed a couple days because I was in Cleveland. I'm back in Miami, and this video, I'm going to write a unit test to test the initialization of a view model for data sources, specifically loading in some platforms. And you know what's interesting? What's interesting is when you consistently demonstrate a skill that most people struggle to just do in their 9 to 5. I do in my bedroom or in the comforts of my living room, just messing around, and I'll just record it live. I'll just I'll do some live coding. I'll write some automated tests. I'll troubleshoot something programmatically, and the majority of people, the majority of professional developers, like they can't even do this during their 9 to 5. And what's strange is the employers, they still don't understand how much money they're wasting. Anyway, yeah, let me share my screen. Oh, let me get off this test. Let me get off this automated test, testing the view model. Hey, you. And so I'm sharing my screen. And so there is a test that I want to add. I love the way my code looks. Like, this is the way a test should look, except it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be this. This is kind of a long test. Like, this test, our setup is pretty significant. Setup looks like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's like 14 lines of code, right? And if I go to my Kindle, my presidential library on my Kindle, my presidential library will say that somewhere in here, in my presidential library of my Kindle, I should have like a F sharp, yeah, testing with F sharp. And this testing with F sharp book, it has like these rules that I think make sense. What is it called? Commandments? Commandments. Can I do this? I don't know how to spell commandments. Oh, yeah. So we have this 10 commandments of test automation, which if I go here, I haven't looked at this in a couple years. Testing behavior, not implementation. Okay. Using ubiquitous language in your test name. Asserting one thing in your test. Don't mock the mockingbird. Always refactor your system under test. Your test should never be more than 10 lines of code. And that's what I was considering. Back in my memory, I knew that there was something that I was violating based on this 10 commandments of unit testing or whatever it's called. When I saw this code right here, because this is obviously more than 10 lines of code. But before I even start writing a test, so this is more than 10 lines of code, but let's really examine this test. So this test is called Save Edited Profile. This will always have 4 stages: setup, test, verify, and teardown. Well, the teardown is really really destroying objects via within the memory, the heap. And well, that's done by our common language runtime or the garbage collector. Yeah, that thing. So we don't need to tear down in here unless we had some static values. And then, well, to preserve our tests and make sure that our tests run in completely, well, to ensure that our tests run in isolation of one another, then I would have a teardown to basically clean up any static objects. But we don't have any static objects, right? This is pretty clean. So we just have setup, test, and verify. And well, this is save edited file. So what's really happening here? Well, our setup is we have to instantiate a view model, which is this right here, that we call a profile editor. This view model takes some dependencies that I call inject, which the dependencies are a user, a save function, and a topics function. Okay. And we then say, hey, how do we know if we save a profile? Well, if we save a profile, then, well, if our test is our client, then we should receive a notification of the profile being saved. And we can respond to that notification of a profile being saved by basically saying, yep, our profile was saved, set that to true, and then verify that the saved occurred is true. So that's essentially what we're doing. In order to save a profile, well, we have to, that profile needs to be valid. So we throw some values into the profile editor, such as first name, last name, and email. And then we validate that that profile can be saved. And if we validate that the profile can be saved, then we go ahead and save it. And that's what we do. If I go to the save, of course, you're not going to. Can I build this? And then can I go to the definition of save? The profile save should, if I just do right click on save, there's a save profile right here. And we see that the save profile takes a validated profile and outputs a result of, if it's successful, a profile request, else if it's an error, the validated profile that we attempted to save. So that's the C# code. The F# version of this is really the, if we go to mock save, if we go to mock save, shoot, if we, come here. If we go to mock save, it should show more than one save. It doesn't. If I go to my bounded context of profile over here, it's not going to be in my bounded context. It's going to be in my some test API. And so if I go to a UI logic, maybe there's a test API in here. There's a mock save right here that basically outputs a save function, which is this right here. That save function that it outputs is actually this function right here that takes in something, and we just mock out that it's okay with some profile requests. Well, what is the save function? What is the signature? And why is it whenever I try to go to definition, it won't go to the definition? All right, so we go to save function, and we see that, let's go to save function. If I go to F12, you should go to the definition. Why are you not going here? Hold up. Come here. Save function type dependency. You, my friend, you should. Okay, what if I just do a. No, what the freak? If I do find all, you should tell me something. So there's a save workflow. There's a save function. We have a. So if we go here, it says that there's a save function. If we go to the definition of a save function, then we see that our save function will take as input a validated profile. And like I said, this is the F# version or C# version. It's the same thing, right? It's just some funkier syntax. Is, I don't feel like going there right now. But our save function takes a validated profile and it returns a result. If the result is successful, it returns a profile. If the result is not successful, it returns a validated profile. All right. And all this stems from this test that I was doing over here with this save function equals mock save, right? So that's a test in which I violated one of the 10 commandments of unit testing because this test exceeds 10 lines of code, but I still think it's readable, so I'm not really going to trip on it. Now, what if I want to do another test? Like, what if I want to test, actually, what if I want to test like this whole notion of data sources? So what if I add a file called, if I had a file called data sources, something like this, and I use a convention of an underscore in front of my unit test, like this. If I do that, okay, then I could say somewhere in here I'm going to have a test using, I think this is XU, no, this is in unit. Shoot. So I say like, I have a test and this test is going to be called initialize ViewModel. But the initialized ViewModel doesn't really make sense. It returns a unit, right? And so this is really like initialized data sources, ViewModel, something like that. And we know that, as I said earlier, every test is going to have a setup, and every test is going to have a test, and every test is going to have a verify. And usually, if this were C++, every test would have a teardown, something like this, right? But we're relying on the common language runtime, garbage collection, thingamajig, so we don't care about that. We just care about our setup, test, and verify. So we have our setup, test, and verify, and we're going to have some notion of let. Oh shoot! Why is my let all the way up here? All right, so we have this notion of like let data sources equal, and there's going to be some view model, right? View model. That view model is going to take some dependencies. We'll just call those dependencies inject, something like that. And we have to actually define what inject is. And we also need to define what the view model is because we didn't import any namespaces or modules up here. But in your test, you're going to eventually say data sources dot init, something like that. And then we will say that our data sources dot platforms, we'll just say that it's not empty. List dot is empty, something like that. We could say equals false, something like that. And what we say, list dot empty should equal false, which means that we need to import fs unit should equal false. I think that's a way. Should, oh yeah, should is a function, so it should be lowercase, I think. So we need to like import like this fs unit, and we need to import like this in-unit.framework, in-units.framework, or something like that. Where's my IntelliSense at? My IntelliSense doesn't appear to be working. And I need to define this inject, but I don't have any red squigglies. And I should at least have some red squigglies. So if I attempt to build, maybe I could brute force my red squigglies, because it should complain about the inject value not being defined, and I'm not getting that right now. It says build failed. If I do a control \E, that's a shortcut. Control \E, you're not working. Control \E. If it failed, then you should show me what failed. If I try to build everything again, or maybe I should just do a rebuild, then maybe it'll actually give me the actual errors. And it's still not showing me. Well, if I go to the output window, I have a whole bunch of errors in here, but it's just not showing up in the errors pane, as in like the actual UI. But whatever. So it's complaining about this test. Says the type test is not defined. Maybe you want the following. And well, this test should be okay. Now, what I can do is I can look at, yes, this test is the same here. Now, what I can do is I can copy paste these imports here that probably have the right, I don't know, casing, but I should get some red squigglies. And when I attempt to build, it is still not giving me my red squigglies. So now it says, and this looks better, the value or constructor view model is not defined. So the view model that we want is like the data sources view model, data sources view model somewhere. But it's just called view model. Well, I could data sources.view model. There you go. I'm so smart. And so this is the data sources.view model. And so this is under the namespace Nikeza mobile.portal.data sources. And okay, I'm not sure if portal is what we want, but I can then go up here and I could say open, and I say this Nikeza mobile portal data sources. That'll work for the view model, but we still have to define what this inject is. But before we even do that, I'll go ahead and build, and it should no longer have a complaint about my view model, but it should have a complaint about my inject. I still don't have any UI X's for errors, which means that I still got to rely on my output window. And so over here it says the value or constructor inject is not defined. You're absolutely right, Willis. It's not defined. So what do we need to do? Well, it says that in our view model that our data sources only takes a platform's function. That's all you take is just a platform's function? It says it only takes a platform's function. Okay. So we just happen to have, if I go back to my test, our test should have a test API somewhere in here, which is this right here. And I should have a mock platform somewhere in here. I have it right here. Yes. Okay. So theoretically, I should just be able to do something like this right here. This mock platform. So I should just be able to pass that in. Of course, I'm going to have to import the module that this mock platforms is in, which is in this Nikeza mobile test API. Pendejo. Yes. So I'm like, I got this Nikeza. I got to import this over here. Come here. Yeah, do something like that. And that should cover it because it only wanted the function, right? It only wanted the function because when I went to, I don't want to go to the generated file. I want to go to the view model. The view model says platform's function. Platform's function is, if I go to the definition, it takes the unit and it returns a platform's query. And that platform's query is really representing an event of platforms succeeded or platforms failed. People argue that this should be a type result of OK and error. I get it. But I don't think there's really a difference, right? The difference is that I wouldn't have to write out this code right here. That's the difference. However, I mean, they may be right. I might have been better off just doing a result type of OK and error. But I thought in Scott Vlach's book, Domain Modeling Made Functional, that the way I understand it, well, he said workflows will output event types. And this isn't a query, I don't think is a workflow. It's just a query, it's just IO. I don't know. This is a style that I'm doing right now because I'm practicing. And so I'll have my retrospective or I might refactor it later. But I think this is okay. This is more explicit. Um, whatever. So if I try to build, what else is it complaining about? It says module data sources is not defined. And what are you talking about? Data sources is right here, Willis. And that's because the S needs to be capitalized like this. And it's still not looking like it. All right. You both should be highlighted. For whatever reason, my Visual Studio, it's I don't know, man. This thing is off. All right, so if I go to my output window, what else does it say? It says the value names data source is not defined. Oh yeah, I got to fix you over here too. Yeah, it'll be nice if you have some red squigglies, And it's taking a little bit longer to build. Okay, it failed again. And it says that the error says system.collections.object model observable collection yada yada. It says it doesn't know what that is. Well, does not match the type a list. What are you talking about? I really miss my data tips. So what is this saying? It's saying that well, you're right. This data sources.platforms is an observable collection, which is if I go to ViewModel, it's complaining about this platforms right here, which is of type observable collection because if I go to its backing field and I hit F12, that's what it is right here. So what I'm supposed to do is it's not a list, it's observable collection. So I need to say like data sources.platforms should be able to say platforms is an object. Should be able to say like platforms dot. I don't know if it's called is empty, something like this. Does link provided is empty? I think it does. I just can't remember. And so is empty is not defined. Well, what is it supposed to be? All right. So if it's not is empty, I just say count. That should work. Count should be, or there should be like any. I think any is a link, like something like this. And if it has at least one item, then it should be true, which means that I probably need to change that false to true like this. This is me now doing object-oriented programming in F sharp. And it says it doesn't know what any is. Well, hold up. Do I need to import system.link? Open system.link, something like that. And then will you build? I think that should be it. And you're still complaining. Why are you giving me a hard time, compiler? It says type mismatch. Okay, type mismatch of what? It says expecting a bool as input that outputs a generic type of A, but given a function as input that in which the next input is a generic of B, and the next input is generic. What is all this? The type bool does not match the type function A that outputs B. And so, okay. So maybe I'll just not use FS unit and I say assert verify, something like that. Data sources, platforms, whatever. I'll do something like this. And are you going to be happy if I do that? This is very object oriented right now. And what's going to be the error? It says verify is not defined. You know, it would help if I had some IntelliSense. All right, so it says the field constructor verify is not defined. Oh, okay. What do you mean you're not defined? Like, what else is there? Like, if I hit dot, did I spell verify right? It looks right. Why isn't verify defined? Assert dot verify. What is the problem? The field or constructor or member verify is not defined. Assert dot verify. Or is it assert dot is true? I think I used the wrong thing. Is that it? I don't have IntelliSense, so I can't remember. I can't draw from memory this whole like object oriented way of doing this. And it succeeds. All right. So assert that is true. Data sources, platforms, any, right? That's the verify. It's verifying what? Well, that when we test this init method of this view model called data sources, that we're going to have some platforms that get populated. Here's my test over here. When I run all tests, it should have 14, I think. Yeah, and all the tests pass. And so this FS unit wasn't used, which probably could be removed, but I'm going to leave this in here because there's some other tests that I need to write eventually. So what just happened? What did I just test? Okay, well, this is what happened. There's a view model. There's view models that basically serve as the mediator for a page or the user interface that a user is going to interface with, right? So we have these view models that basically represent the state of a page or the state of a user interface. And so what I'm doing is I'm spinning up an instance of a view model that is supposed to represent the state of a user interface that a user would interact with. But a view model also, it's not just state, but also is responsible for forwarding requests from a user to the domain model. So the user will operate on the user interface via a button click or selecting an item in the list box or typing in characters, and that view model will intercept that request, perhaps convert that request into something that's understandable, potentially. That may not be the role of a view model, but ultimately at a high level, that view model will take that request from a user or that message from a user, and it will forward or dispatch that message to the domain. That domain will take that message and it will process that message, and then it'll return a response. That ViewModel will take that response, and usually it will mutate one of its properties based on the response that was returned from the domain, right? So that's the way that it works. If we actually look at the ViewModel, we were testing the viewmodels.init. And so if I go to this data sources ViewModel, the init is right here, right? So we have our platforms function, which was injected into the ViewModel, which we see right here, okay? Which we could probably get rid of this now. Maybe not. Does it still build? Do you still build? Do you know what a platforms function is? I mean, we're using it in the code, so you should know what a platform function is. Still succeeds. Okay, good. And we could get rid of this over here. All right, so like this ViewModel takes within its constructor a platforms function, right? Yes, this is called dependency injection. Okay. And that is the function that it uses when it is initializing, which means that when it initializes, ultimately we want to get the platforms such as YouTube, Stack Overflow, Medium.com, WordPress, whatever platforms are there. Usually in production, this init function is going to rely on some I/O, right? It's going to query the platforms using a HTTP request, but this is an automated test, and so we don't want to do any HTTP requests. We just want to make sure that our business logic is correct. So in order to verify the business logic is correct, we, instead of using an actual I/O operation that relies on the HTTP request, we mock that out. Hence, if you look at the test API over here, we were using this mock platforms function right here, right? So if you look at the test, we have mock platforms right here that we're actually passing into the ViewModel constructor. So when we call this init, which is what we're testing, we are, let me go over here, we're taking that function that we injected into our ViewModel, and we're actually invoking it with the argument. That argument is of type unit, hence the open close parenthesis. So we're saying platforms function, and we passed in the argument of unit, in which that's all that it needs in order for this function to execute. The function executes, and then we process using pattern matching the result of that function for platforms. And it's going to be platforms succeeded or platforms failed. And if it succeeded, then it's going to take the platforms and it's going to push the platforms into our observable collection, which is this right here. And that's pretty much it. And that is what we did. Now, if you want to see me step through the debugger, then I can do that too. So like over here, I could put a breakpoint right here, or if I want to be cool, I could just hit F9 where the cursor is, and then if I really want to be cool, I could do Control RT, and that should work. And so the solution is building, and hopefully we will hit a breakpoint. Hopefully. And the breakpoint is hit. I hit F11. I'm in the ViewModels init method. The platform's function is the next line of to be executed. I hit F11 in there. It then says, well, here's the mock platforms that I was injected. We're going to use that. If I step into that, it executes the function of mock platforms, in which we just say, platform succeeded, and we pass in some text such as YouTube, WordPress, and Stack Overflow. And the platform succeeded is indeed what is returned. That's what we pattern match on. And we take the platforms that is in this P right here, and we basically pass that into the constructor of our observable collection, which is our platform's property on our view model. And we do that, and that init is over with. And then we say, does the platform's property on our view model, does it have any data? And yes, it does. It has YouTube, WordPress, and Stack Overflow. So because it has data in it by means of any, then that assert is true. And that is it. That is a test that most developers don't know how to do. And so they spend their time launching the application to verify that this works. Where cool people, professionals, they just programmatically do this. Instead of it taking several seconds or minutes, it takes a millisecond. So yeah, if you were to just run this, remove that, and if I just wanted to run this initialize right here, then I would get, I probably should update the name to something more descriptive. So this took 146 milliseconds. That's how long it took. How long does it take your developers to test that manually? That's the question. I bet you it's not 146 milliseconds. And this is how your budget is being consumed. So this initialized data sources view model, that probably can be renamed to init, or we could say I can't spell, initializing view model results, and or initializing view model loads platforms, something like that. I don't know if I spelled initializing right, but this name in my test explorer should be updated. It should be updated. This is what we want to update. And it does get updated. Initializing view model loads platforms. That's what we want. And we just run it. And I mean, we didn't change anything but the name of the test. And it is green. And that is it. So that's an example of writing an automated test to test the load of, or the test the initialization of a view model. I'll commit this to my GitHub. All this is open source. And I say added test for initializing, I can't spell, view model of data sources, something like that. And I say commit all and push, and that is it. Yes. All right, so I can stop sharing. And was my microphone on? Yeah, my microphone was on. All right. So that's it. That's unit testing and view model initialization. I'm Scott Nimrod. I'm available for contract. I do WPF. I do Xamarin. I do a lot of things. But yeah, that's it. Peace.